Before I read this letter, you should know the spirit in which it was written. When my brother Alfred wrote to me from California in 1852 telling me of his debts, I answered him not as an officer or an observer of events, but as an older brother who had already learned too late how easily a man can squander what little security he possesses. Alfred was young, stationed far from home in the unsettled atmosphere of Sonoma during the gold rush, surrounded by expense, distraction, and false confidence. I feared not for his courage or his honor, but for his judgment. What you are about to hear is my attempt to check him before he crossed a line from which there is no easy return, even as I confessed my own failures and regrets. I wrote it plainly and with urgency because the matter was serious and because he was my brother. This is not a short letter, but it does capture well the relationship between Alfred and me. So I shall now begin my letter to Alfred from my location at Fort Vancouver, Oregon, March 18th, 1853. My dear Alfred, I presume you are again wondering what the devil has become of me, for I fear that my last letter to you has miscarried, as I hear nothing of others sent at the same time. I wrote you from the Salmon at the end of September, and just as I had finished it, yours of April and some other date came along. It was the first time I had heard of you since your departure. I gave you in mine a full account of my doings and wanderings since the previous one. You very naturally blame me for my neglect of writing home, but I have written once a month since I went to the mines, with perhaps one exception, and sometimes oftener. There is, however, no mail farther than Humboldt Bay, and access to that is very uncertain. We not only have great trouble in getting letters, but as the only means of sending is through occasional pack trains, we are by no means confident that ours will go out safely. In fact, I did not hear of my appointment till about the 20th of November, and then by a mere report brought up by a man who came from San Francisco. My letters did not reach the bay until the 1st of December. But for the impending famine through all the northern mines, I should not have left them even on hearing of the appointment, for I was not an applicant for it, and was ignorant then that the salary had been raised. To remain was, however, out of the question, for I saw clearly that the suffering would be terrible, and that the winter diggings there would not warrant one in remaining. There was not 10 days' provisions in the whole country when I left. The rivers were high, and snow fell immediately after to an unusual depth. All the signs are of a very severe winter and a very early one. Here where I now write in Oregon, the country is covered with snow to the depth of over a foot, and it is hard frozen. There is not a hope of saving the cattle. Many will perish through almost the whole extent of Oregon. Many emigrants will lose from $5,000 to $10,000 worth. The potatoes have been frozen to a serious extent, for you know they rarely more than house them, and even the seed wheat has been ground up. Wheat is worth $6 a bushel. Flour at the Oregon mills is $40 per barrel, so that you see the prospects in the mountains. The Columbia is frozen nearly across at Vancouver, a very unusual thing. Even had I been aware of the increase in the salary of the collector of Astoria, I should not, until knowing how the election had gone, have left the mines with any favorable prospects, for I had firmly determined to continue in them until I had money enough to establish me in something else. There is no country in the world where money is as necessary to success as it is in California and Oregon. To take this office for a few months and then to be turned out of it without standing bonds and the necessity of waiting until my accounts are settled before I go out of gunshot would be ruinous to me. Even on my arrival at San Francisco, to which place I hurried, I was in great doubt whether I ought not at once to decline it, and it was only on learning the probability that Wolcott had forwarded my bond with the necessary security, and on the urgent recommendation of Hooker, that I concluded to defer a decision till my arrival. I have written to notify the department of my being here, and am going up to Oregon City and Salem as soon as the mail comes to see the governor and ascertain if they have been sent to him with the commission as I was advised. If so, I am bound in honor to qualify under any circumstances, for John Adair is a defaulter, and although I never applied for the office, nor did any of the family, I feel that I ought to do so under the circumstances, even if I were turned out the next day. It seems that Fillmore gave me the appointment of his own accord on being satisfied that the report of my intemperate habits was incorrect. And speaking of that, Let me set you at rest on the subject. When we parted, I told you that I had resolved not to drink anything as long as I remained on the Pacific. I did not consider or intend it as a pledge, but as a resolve, and in fact, for a long time, drank little or nothing. However, when our expedition was up, and after being detained until too late to do anything, I found myself adrift again. I did drink considerably, less as a habit than when I was with other men who did. When I went to the mines, I solemnly pledged myself, however, that I would use no ardent spirits whatever, and I have kept it. I have not touched a glass of liquor in more than 6 months, and even of wine and ale, I have been very sparing. And now that for the first time I write you since you told me of the affair, I renew the pledge to you on my word of honor, so that you can be easy on that score at least. I was unsuccessful in the mines, though I made my expenses. I think, however, I could do much better another year with my present experience, and if I lose this office, I shall return to them to remain. As to that, the boys told me that Pierce had given Uncle William a promise not to remove me, and though I do not put much confidence in that, I have more in the urgent assurances of Hooker that I need be under no apprehension. He could not, of course, go into particulars, but I felt satisfied that he would use his own influence to aid in having me retained. I told him that I should, of course, be glad of any assistance from my friends, but I could not consent that any other interest should be sacrificed on my account, as I had no right to ask favors from the new administration, and it might exhaust their influence to keep me in. There are some excuses for lenity towards me, it is true. For Adair, though a Democrat, has been suffered to remain through his whole term, and I was only appointed at the expiration of it on his proving a defaulter. This being a territory, too, and not a state, and having therefore no right to vote, is of less consequence, but there will be awful kicking if any Whigs are left in. There is a split in the Democratic ranks, and at the head of one branch is Judge Pratt, with a tale of Thurston men. They are the most violent, foul-mouthed, and abusive blackguards out of hell, and Pratt the damnedest rascal going, and every possible effort will be made by them to clear the kitchen. To this set belong the old Methodist mission backsliders and all of Pike and Posey counties, and a beautiful, lovely, and charming set they are. Now I want to be perfectly candid with you in the matter, for I know you will wish to exert yourself about it, and may possibly ask from Gov. Smith's friendship, his influence with the administration. If I am not removed, I shall hold myself perfectly aloof from politics here and elsewhere, without a sacrifice of any principle. What turn matters may take hereafter I cannot foresee. I am a Whig, but I am a Union man first. I have always held Seward in contempt and never would vote for him since his first election for anything. If, as is possible, the old Union Whig party is dead, I am free to follow any banner I see fit, but I do not choose to commit myself in advance, nor do I wish to make that any recommendation. But what I wish particularly to say is that, feeling perfectly satisfied that I have no right to ask any favors, I do not wish anyone as a mere matter of friendship to push his influence to retain me. The office is now worth $5,000 a year, for the salary was raised to $3,000 on Adair's account, and the fees and commissions will probably amount to that in addition, the highest limit allowed. There will, therefore, be many applicants for it. If I can retain it without undue or unreasonable solicitation, well and good. If not, I shall blame no one, nor complain, but go my way rejoicing that it is no worse. So much for that. Now as to yourself, I had a long conversation with Stoneman at San Fran, who told me more particularly than you did the conduct of Mr. Secretary Conrad and General Scott to you. As to Conrad, I knew he was a blackguard from a letter he wrote Governor Gaines in reply to one drafted by me at the time the troops were withdrawn from this country. But I did think better of Scott. I did not work for him at this election and should not ever have voted had I known as much as I do now. However, his fish is somewhat overdone, and there is no use saying more of it. As to Hitchcock, I did not call on him at San Francisco, and should not even had I time. I did not like him last winter at Benicia, and my opinion is not elevated since. He has behaved very badly about the troops which he promised to send immediately for our protection and to punish the Indian murders on Klamath, instead of which he sent 4 companies, I think, to Fort Vancouver, where there was no more use for them than in heaven, besides 1 or 2 to Port Orford, a little hole in the coast in which it is said he owns lots, and where he has had dragoons, infantry, topags, artillery, and what not surveying roads, etc., for more than a year past. I saw Hooker, but for 15 minutes, but spent an evening with Stoney. Damn it, but it does me good to meet an army man. There's something in the grip of one's fist that goes to the marrow of a man's heart, and your old friends have been so much mine that I seem to be hugging you when I meet them, as I suppose they feel towards me. Stoneman, too, is a glorious good fellow, hearty, knowable, and very much attached to you, as to do you justice all are. I'll tell you one man I like, and that is Stone. I think more of him than of almost anybody of his age I ever saw. If he does not make a great man one day, it will be because he does not get a fair show. Poor Kennedy and old Miller had both lost their number in the business since I was at Benicia. Griff I did not see. Only think of the old heathens writing me a letter of 7 pages. I saw Cross, who was with us in coming across the plains, and Major Smith, the doctor's brother, who puts me in mind of him a good deal. Your report that the bloody rifles still hold me in pious remembrance corroborates the words of the prophet that the memory of the just shall live. I wish I could see their old mugs once more. Remember me to them one and all with the heartiest Merry Christmas I can give. By the way, the ancient Steve is in San Francisco in the marshal's office. He has left his wife here, and I learn that she is going home. Hathaway broke his leg last winter in jumping off the 2nd-story piazza of Irving's old house. I presume he is recovered long since. As soon as I get warm in office, I am going up to see them at Vancouver. Actona is abandoned to my great discontent. I shall move the office down to the lower burg. Adairville is deserted, and Leonard and Green live below at Hinsel's old store. The Frosts are in California. Oregon City, Deck 26. I'm up here at Oregon City again. Came up to see if my bonds had been executed, but if so, they have not arrived. I shall wait until the arrival of the next mail before giving a definitive answer to the department. As yet, I have merely notified them of my arrival in the territory. To give $50,000 bonds here is, as you can imagine, out of the question. If my friends in New York are willing to back me, well and good. If not, I shall be under all the less obligation to them and continue to paddle my own canoe as best I can. I am rather anxious now that I am here to get the place, for as soon as I can write out my account of the Klamath country to send on for publication and finish copying my journal of the Rifle Regiment tour, which if I remain here, I will do this winter and send to you. I mean to go seriously to work at a book on Oregon, intended to be of a permanent character. I ought to have done this before, but I have hitherto had no settled quarters of my own since I have been in the country. Now, however, the disposition to scribble is strong upon me, as you will imagine from the length of this letter. What you say about your being in debt distresses me. I hope to heaven, however, that you will under no circumstances be induced to part with or mortgage your farm. Woolcott writes that Hall McAllister wishes to purchase it. To lose a source of certain income would be ruinous, for you can never in human probability replace it. I am afraid that you lived far too extravagantly at Sonoma with your drag, etc. For God's sake, Alfred, be prudent and keep within bounds. If you can't live on your present pay as an aide and the rent from the farm, what will become of you if you lose your little capital and are reduced to the former alone, especially as that may be diminished hereafter? I'm certainly a poor example of prudence and economy, but if you knew the regrets that beset me for my past want of providence, you would think me a good warning at least. It is a bitter mortification that I, the oldest, should at this time be not only unable to help thee out and to add something to mother's comfort, but am living from hand to mouth with so little hope for the future. Griffin is constantly abusing me for not taking the farm when I was in San Francisco, but I am satisfied I did right, for to carry it on without means adequate in advance would have been madness, and the result of your tenant's experience shows that even a large sum could readily be sunk there. Nor would I have ventured to borrow the money for the purpose where failure would have risked everything, credit and all. What little I still owe is a nightmare to me, and with God's grace, I will not run further into debt. I shall try and obtain employment for the winter here, and as soon as I can return to the mines and stay there. I presume that with the new administration, Governor Smith will return to California, and you with him. I hope the prospects of both will then brighten. They are dull enough now. I shall close this to be ready for any chance to send to Astoria. The river has been entirely shut up, but it is now raining, and there is every probability of a severe freshet. The snow is 18 inches deep over the whole country, and if it goes off rapidly, Oregon City may go too. Give my respects to General Smith and remember me to any of my old friends you see. I shall write, if possible, when the mail comes in, to let you know what I do about the collectorship. Take care of yourself, and may the skies be brighter when we again meet. George P.S. I have written you several times, though you seem to have gotten but one. Your letter of August 12th is the last I have received, and this reached me on arriving at Humboldt Bay about the 1st.